He said, "Nobody cares about your dumb stories, Grandma. They're boring." And everyone laughed. That laugh, it didn't come from cruelty, not exactly. It came from comfort, the comfort of knowing I wouldn't fight back. It was a Sunday dinner, the kind I still tried to make feel like something. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. I'd peeled, chopped, stirred, set the table with napkins folded the way my mother taught me, like swans, even if no one noticed. He was scrolling on his phone between bites, pausing only to mock a headline. I'd said something small, maybe about how his great-grandfather crossed state lines with one shoe and a head full of poems, and how stories are a way to remember, to keep people alive after they're gone. That's when he said it, loud enough to cut through the soft clink of silverware. "Nobody cares about your dumb stories, Grandma. They're boring." And then, as if to seal it, he added, "We're not in the 1800s. His mother, my daughter, didn't correct him. Just smirked, sipped her wine, and kept talking about tuition deadlines. I didn't say a word. I smiled the kind of smile that women my age learn how to wear. A thin cover over thick bruises. My hands kept serving spoonfuls. My back stayed straight. But inside something tilted. It didn't break. It didn't bleed. It tilted, like a door slowly closing. He's 17. That awkward space between child and man. All jawline and arrogance. He wears cologne that smells like ego and insecurity. I used to rock him when he had night terrors. He used to call me his star grandma because I knew the names of all the constellations. Now I'm just the woman in the extra room who makes things from scratch and tells stories that apparently mean nothing. Later that evening, I heard him laughing in his room. A loud, hard kind of laugh. The kind young people make when they don't yet know how cruel they sound. He was on a call. His voice carried through the thin walls. "I swear, she thinks anyone cares. She's always writing in that notebook like she's Maya Angelou or something. It's kind of sad." I stood in the hallway, unseen, and let his words hit me like cold rain. I didn't cry. Not then. Not yet. That night, I opened my notebook. Not the spiral one I use for grocery lists. The other one. The one I keep tucked under the bed. Leather-bound, worn at the corners. I've been writing in it for over 20 years. Stories, yes. But not just stories. Memories, lessons. Things I've never said out loud. One entry for each moment I refused to disappear. He doesn't know I taught English for 38 years. Doesn't know that the city's literacy program was something I helped start. Doesn't know that one of my former students is now a state senator. He knows none of it because he's never asked. He sees an old woman with thinning hair and a creaky knee. A burden, maybe. A placeholder. A shadow. He doesn't know that the house he lives in, the one with the green shutters and the creaking stairs, is mine. They think they're doing me a favor, letting me stay here. That's what my daughter said when I moved in 7 years ago. "It's just until you get on your feet again, Mom." As if I ever fell. But I smiled. I always smile. I cooked. I cleaned. I watched him after school. I kept my stories small, tucked into my chest like folded linens. Until now, the shift began not with his insult, but with the silence that followed. No one defended me. No one said, "That's enough." No one looked at me like I still mattered. I went to bed early that night, sat at the window and watched the neighbor's porch light flicker off. The world moved on, and I just sat there, holding a teacup that had gone cold. In the morning, I made breakfast, like always. Bacon, eggs, toast. I left it on the counter, untouched. I didn't wait to be thanked. I went back to my room, pulled out the deed, yes, the actual deed, from a small fireproof box in the closet. My name, my husband's signature, dated 1976. I held it for a long while, let the weight of it settle into my lap. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like truth. I placed the paper back into the box and made one phone call, a number I hadn't dialed in years. Eleanor? The voice on the other end was old and steady. Yes, it's me, I said. I need a lawyer, not for a fight, just for a decision. That was all I said. The next morning, I brewed coffee, sat down, and wrote a story. Not for my grandson, not for anyone's approval, for me. It began with a single sentence. Once upon a time, there was a woman who everyone thought was silent until she spoke. I didn't move in because I was helpless. I moved in because she said it would be temporary. Just until things settle, Mum. That was 7 years ago. After my husband passed, the house felt too quiet. The garden wilted without him talking to it like he always did. You have to speak to things that grow, he used to say. They need a voice to stretch toward. I stayed for 2 years alone. Then she called. It'll be good for all of us, she said. You won't be alone, and I could use a little help with Dylan. That's my grandson, the one who now mocks me between bites of cereal. At first, I believed her, believed in the warmth of shared meals, in the idea of a multi-generational home, of laughter echoing through the hallway again. But the meals grew short, the laughter shrank to rooms I wasn't welcome in, and the warmth, well, it thinned like an old quilt. Not gone, just stretched too far. My room is the one over the garage. They call it cozy. It has a sloped ceiling, a window too small to open, and a door that doesn't quite shut unless you kick it at the corner. There's a folding chair by the bed, a shelf with 3 books they think I brought. I didn't. They were already here, untouched. And a dresser with a drawer that sticks. They didn't decorate it for me. They cleared it out. I brought my own quilt, blue, hand-stitched. A piece of our old life sewn into the fabric. Paul and I worked on it the year he retired. I did the stitching. He picked the patterns. He always liked stars, said they reminded him of possibility. He used to joke, if you can't afford a second honeymoon, at least sleep under the galaxies. I sleep under them still, even here. In the beginning, they were kind. My daughter brought me tea in the evenings. Dylan helped me carry boxes. It felt, for a while, like maybe we'd made something good. A new chapter, not a sad ending. But kindness, I've learned, has a shelf life. It expired slowly, the way milk goes, fine one day, sour the next, and you can't quite tell when the change happened. Rules started appearing. No scented candles. They bother Dylan. Try not to use the washer on weekends. It runs loud. If you're going to cook, could you not make onions? The smell lingers. I nodded. Always nodded. I tried to be small, to make my presence feel like a favor, not a fact. I cleaned without being asked, folded laundry tighter than I needed to, even started walking to the grocery store to avoid asking for rides. Sometimes I would sit on the patio in the mornings with my tea. It was the only hour the house felt mine, when the sprinklers hissed quietly and the sun stretched through the fences. But even that changed. One morning my daughter said, "Can we not leave the rocking chair out front? It throws off the whole vibe." So I stopped. My stories used to live in classrooms. I taught for nearly 4 decades. Freshman English. Public high school. I know what it is to lose a room full of teenagers, and how to get them back. You don't shout. You wait. You pause just long enough for the silence to stretch, then fill it with something that matters. But at this table, my silence wasn't power. It was permission. Permission for them to forget that I ever mattered. I once gave a talk at a library about the poetry of loss. 10 people came. One man wept during a line from Auden. Stop all the clocks. That was 3 years ago. Now I'm asked to stop reading aloud because Dylan's trying to concentrate. He doesn't know I was published. Twice. Small journals, modest pay. But my name was in print. I used to carry the clippings in my wallet. I've since moved them to the bottom of a box in the back of my closet. They didn't survive the last decluttering spree. We need to make space, she said, and handed me a donation bag. Sometimes I wonder if she sees me at all, or just the chores I do. If I stopped folding towels, would they notice? If I stopped baking banana bread, would they ask where I went? The truth is, I became background, a soft outline, a free sitter, a hot meal, a folding wallet. And that night, after Dylan's remark, I felt it settle into place. I wasn't living with family. I was staying in a house where I was tolerated, as long as I cost nothing and said nothing. So the next morning, I made a list. Not a dramatic one, not some fiery inventory of wrongs, just a simple column of facts. Number of meals cooked since moving in, 712. Number of times I was thanked, maybe 12. Number of stories told, 94. Number of stories heard, 0. I folded the list, placed it in my notebook, and drank my tea slowly. Mint and chamomile, Paul's favourite. Later that afternoon, I took the bus downtown. I said I was going to the library. I didn't lie. I did stop there. But my real destination was a small legal office with a green awning. I hadn't been in years. Not since we updated the trust after Paul died. I asked to see Eleanor. The receptionist blinked at me. She's semi-retired, she said. Tell her it's Edith Taylor. She came out in a cardigan and old shoes and hugged me like I'd never left. Her office still smelled like dust and lavender. We talked. I showed her the deed. We reviewed the documents. She asked one question. Are you ready? And I answered, not with bitterness, but with something quieter, stronger. Yes, before I was someone's grandmother, someone's mother, someone's wife. I was Miss Taylor. Room 212. Chalk on my hands, a thermos of coffee on the desk, and a wall lined with student essays that smelled of erasers and effort. I taught English for 38 years. Not the kind with fancy lectures or slow walks through Shakespeare. The real kind, in rooms that echoed with too loud laughter, broken lockers, and kids who thought commas were optional. I taught kids who showed up hungry, kids who hadn't heard a bedtime story since they could remember, kids who needed someone to look them in the eyes and say, "You're not invisible." So I did. Every September, I started the same way. I'd hold up a thin, wrinkled paperback, usually of Mice and Men or To Kill a Mockingbird, and ask, "What's the point of stories?" Blank stares. Then I'd answer myself, "Because stories remind us who we are, even when the world forgets." Some of them rolled their eyes. Some smiled. Some, the ones who needed it most, leaned forward just a little. I kept a box in my classroom. It was dented and duct-taped, marked, "Turn in here." Students could submit anything, not just essays, letters, rants, dreams, apologies, confessions. One girl wrote every week about her mother's boyfriend and the way he watched her. I made sure she got help. Another wrote about wanting to disappear. I told him, "Not on my watch." He hugged me after graduation and said, "You saved my life, Miss Taylor." He works at a university now, sent me a Christmas card just last year, called me his first real teacher. That's who I was. That's the me they don't know. Dylan doesn't know any of it. To him, I'm just a woman who refills the sugar jar, folds his socks, and won't stop telling stories no one asked for. Sometimes I think, maybe that's why it hurts so much. not because he said it, but because of what it proved, that I had disappeared right in front of them, and nobody blinked. When I first moved in, he used to sit beside me on the couch. We'd watch old black and white movies, and I'd tell him what the actors meant with their silences. He'd ask questions, laugh at the way people used to talk, imitate their voices. We had a rhythm then, small but real. That stopped around middle school. First came the headphones, then the shrugging, then the distance, that invisible wall teenagers build between themselves and anything soft. By high school, I was just Grandma. Not a name, just a placeholder. A few months ago, he needed help with an essay, a college prep class. He handed me the draft without looking up. It was fine, functional, clean, but it didn't breathe. "Tell me something true," I said. "One thing you're afraid to write." He blinked at me, annoyed. "Can't you just edit the grammar?" So I fixed his grammar, didn't touch the soul. He got a B+, shrugged, moved on. He doesn't know I've read thousands of essays, doesn't know that words are how I survive, how I've always survived. The notebook under my bed isn't just filled with stories. It's a map of every time I held my breath instead of speaking. Every moment I let the silence sit because I was tired of shouting into the void. It holds poems I wrote when Paul was dying, letters I never sent, memories I wrote down so I wouldn't forget who I'd been. One of the stories in there is about the night my daughter was born. I was 22. Paul was parking the car. The nurse handed me a clipboard and said, "Mother's name?" And I froze. Not because I didn't know it, but because it hit me all at once. That was me now. I was the mother. I wrote it down. Shaky. Edith Taylor. And beneath it, I wrote a note in the corner of the form. "Remember this moment. It changes everything." I remember. I remember the night Dylan was born. My daughter asked me to stay at the hospital. I held him in a blanket that smelled like starch and brand new beginnings. His hand curled around my finger like a promise. That promise has faded. Maybe it was never made out loud. Maybe I imagined it. But I didn't imagine the way his words stung the other night. The next day, I did what I've always done when something breaks inside me. I wrote. The story I wrote that morning wasn't fiction. It was titled "The Boy Who Forgot His Grandmother." I didn't write it with anger. I wrote it with observation, with detail, with the calm ache of someone used to being forgotten. I wrote how he stopped listening, how he started calling me extra, how he laughed when I told him about Paul's poetry journal, how he dismissed our family stories as boomer stuff, how I stood by the kitchen sink, hands wet, eyes dry, and thought, "You don't know what you've lost yet. But one day, you will." I wrote all of it, in ink, longhand. And when I finished, I didn't cry. I photocopied it. 3 copies, one for the notebook, one for Eleanor, in case she ever needs to explain me, and one I folded into an envelope and sealed with red wax, the old-fashioned kind. Paul used to call it real closure. I don't know yet who that one's for. Maybe Dylan, maybe not. Maybe it's for me. To remind myself that even if no one listens, I still get to speak. Later that night, he asked what was for dinner. Didn't apologize, didn't mention the night before, just expected me to cook. So I made spaghetti, the kind he likes, with garlic bread and soft butter and a sprinkle of cheese. I set it down without a word. He ate without a thank you. And I smiled. Not the tight smile I've worn for years. A different one. One that meant, this is the last dinner I'll cook without being seen. It wasn't the first time he embarrassed me, not even close. But it was the first time I let myself name it. The first time was quieter. He was maybe 10, still small enough to need help tying his shoes, but already learning how to roll his eyes. We were walking into the school parking lot. I was picking him up because his mother was stuck at work. I had on my favorite cardigan, the one with the stitched roses and big wooden buttons. It was a little faded at the elbows, but warm, and I liked the way it smelled like cedar. A group of boys stood near the bike rack. He walked a few paces ahead of me and turned his head just enough to mutter, "Can you not wear that sweater next time? It's kind of embarrassing." I stopped. Just for a second. Enough to feel it. That slow, slippery burn of shame that doesn't belong to you but lands on your skin anyway. I smiled, nodded. "Of course, sweetheart." And I never wore it again. That's how it starts. Not with shouting, not with slamming doors, but with requests wrapped in politeness. "Can you not talk about Grandpa's stories? Can you not use that perfume? Can you not play your music so loud? Can you not make the house smell like old food? Can you not be quite so much yourself?" So you shrink, you soften, you erase, until one day you realize there's almost nothing left to erase. He used to love my stories. When he was little, he'd crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms. I'd tell him about the time Paul and I got stuck in a rainstorm in the Smokies and had to sleep under a picnic table with a blanket and a dog we didn't own. He'd giggle, ask for details, ask what kind of dog. I'd make one up. Beagle, Labrador, a dog with a name like Buttons. He used to say, "Tell it again, Grandma." So I did, again and again and again. And then one day, he didn't ask any more. He got older. I expected that. But I didn't expect the way his face changed when I started to speak. The way his eyes glazed over. The way his fingers moved faster over his phone. I became background noise. It hurts differently when the silence comes from someone you helped raise. But I never told him that. Never told his mother either. She was too busy, too tired, too burdened by the weight of everything. Or so she said. I told myself it was just a phase. I've told myself a lot of things. That maybe if I helped more, they'd see me. That maybe if I gave them space, they'd come to me. That maybe if I was just a little quieter, a little easier, a little more grateful, they'd remember who I am. But gratitude without recognition is just servitude. And the truth is, they don't ask me to help because they value me. They ask because it's convenient, because I'm here, because I don't complain. Not out loud. But I've been writing it all down. Every story, every slight. Every moment I chose silence over shame. I don't write to make anyone guilty. I write to make myself real again. And lately, I've started typing them up. At first, it was just to preserve them. I told myself I was organizing, creating an archive, a way to remember. But it became something else, something bigger. I gave them titles, gave them shape. One story is called "The Day the Banana Bread Wasn't Enough." Another is "I Lived Here Too." I typed them at night, after everyone had gone to bed. The hum of the dishwasher in the background, the house finally quiet enough to hear myself think. And that's when I started considering something I hadn't dared think about in years. Sharing them. Not with family. No. They'd already decided they weren't interested. But maybe with others. With women like me. With strangers who might read a line and think, "That's me. That's exactly what happened to me." The thought scared me, made me feel foolish. Who would care about stories from a 72-year-old woman in a house that isn't hers anymore? But fear is funny. It's loud until the moment you face it. And that night, after I typed the story about the cardigan, I opened a new tab and searched for how to publish online anonymously. I chose a pen name. Something simple. A name I once dreamed of giving a daughter I never had. Marion Ellis. It felt soft in the mouth, strong in the bones. I didn't post anything yet. I just created the account. Sat there looking at the blank page, thinking. And then Dylan knocked. It was past 10. He never knocked. "Grandma?" he said through the door. "Can you help me with something?" I closed the laptop. "Come in." He held a piece of paper, frowning. "It's a scholarship essay. They want something meaningful. Can you look it over?" I took it, read it slowly. It was clean, polished, empty. "You wrote this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Kind of." I looked at him then. Really looked. He didn't see me. He saw a tool, a spell check, a shortcut to something he didn't want to reach for himself. I handed it back. "You don't need my edits," I said. "You need a story, a real one." He looked confused. "You want college money?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," he said, like it was obvious. "Then you'd better figure out how to tell the truth." He left, muttering something about me being weird lately. He doesn't know that I hold the deed to this house. He doesn't know that the woman with the dumb stories is about to publish them. And he sure as hell doesn't know that the next story I write might just begin like this. The boy wanted a future, but he forgot to honor the past, and the past remembered. The stories live in a shoebox under my bed, not because they're fragile, but because no one's ever asked to read them. I started writing them years ago, after Paul died. Grief has a way of loosening memory like rain on dry soil. Suddenly, things bloom you forgot you planted. I'd sit by the kitchen window, pen in hand, and let the silence speak. It wasn't healing, not exactly, but it was something close, a reassembling. I never wrote to be admired. I wrote because I couldn't carry it all in my chest anymore. Some stories are small. The morning I burned the toast and Paul said it smelled like his childhood. Others are sharp. The day I found my daughter crying in the garage, 14 and lost, and all I could do was hold her until she stopped shaking. Some are just strange snapshots. A woman in the supermarket who smelled like my mother's perfume, or a bird that kept tapping the window every morning for weeks and then never came back. They aren't glamorous. They aren't grand. But they're mine. They're what's left when no one's listening. But I still need to be heard. I wrote one called The Sink. Just that. No plot. Just a list of every time I stood at a sink and said nothing when I wanted to scream. The night Paul told me his diagnosis. The night my daughter told me she was pregnant and terrified. The night Dylan called me so out of touch it's sad. And I laughed like it was funny. There's a kind of dignity in the ordinary, if someone bothers to notice. No one here notices. They see the laundry folded, the dinners made, the bills paid without being asked. They see the results, not the woman who made them possible. A few months ago, my daughter tried to throw the box away. She was cleaning, purging, she called it. "Do you even need all these papers?" she asked. "They're just old stories." I smiled and took the box back. Didn't argue, just held it close and said, "Yes, I need them." She rolled her eyes. "That's the problem with the kind of work women like me do. It doesn't leave receipts. No paycheck, no trophies, no proof. Just a box of pages and a house full of people who think the walls raised themselves. But I remember. I remember everything. The down payment Paul and I scraped together. After 3 years of clipping coupons and sharing one car and saying no to every whim. The nights I stayed up sewing Halloween costumes because we couldn't afford store-bought. The mornings I packed 3 lunches and skipped my own breakfast. The debt we paid off. The birthdays we stretched. The quiet resilience of making do and still making joy. And now, they ask what I've contributed, as if contribution only counts if you can write a check. But here's the part they forgot. I can write a check. I can write the check that keeps this house, or the one that sells it. Because what no one seems to understand, what they've never even thought to ask, is that I never signed this house away. I still hold the title. Legally, entirely. It's mine. It always has been. When I moved in, I never thought I'd need to keep that to myself. But something in me, maybe wisdom, maybe fear, said, wait and see. And I did. 7 years later, I've seen enough. That day after Dylan asked for help with his essay, I pulled the box out from under the bed. I opened it like a vault, took out the envelope with the deed, touched the corner with my thumb like I always do, as if paper can tell you it's real. And then I sat down and wrote a new story. The house that wasn't theirs. In it, I described everything. The nights I tiptoed through the hallway so I wouldn't disturb them. The way they laughed in the other room when I said I didn't know how to work the smart TV. The way Dylan once imitated my voice for his friends and thought I couldn't hear. I wrote it all. And then I typed it. Not in my usual private document. I opened the site I'd registered. Under my new name. I posted it. I expected nothing, truly. Maybe 2 views, maybe none. But the next morning, there were 48, then 113, then comments, real ones. This is my mother's story. I cried reading this. Thank you for putting it into words. Your voice matters. Please don't stop. I sat at the kitchen table reading them, blinking fast so no one would notice. It was the first time in years I felt seen. Not by my family, but by strangers. Women like me. Scattered across the country. Reading on phones, on lunch breaks, in quiet corners of 2 full houses. I posted another story the next day. Then another. By the end of the week, I had over 600 readers. It didn't make me famous. It made me feel real again. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not even Eleanor. Some secrets are sweeter when they belong only to you for a while. But I started thinking differently. Walking differently. Like someone who remembers her name. That weekend, Dylan came in with another essay. This one longer. Better. He'd tried. Can you help me again? He asked, softer this time. I nodded, read it, marked a few places. It's good, I said. It's better when it sounds like you. He smiled, half grateful, half embarrassed. Then he asked it. Grandma, would you help pay for my college? Just, like, a loan or something? I looked at him. This boy who once curled into my arms and cried when he thought the thunder would take us all. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I'd already written the answer. It was waiting for him in the next story. It was the smell that told me everything. That sweet, artificial cologne boys wear when they're trying to be men. He walked past my door, pacing. I could hear the nervous rhythm of his steps. 4 strides one way, 4 back. Then the door creaked. A soft knock. Grandma? I didn't answer right away. Just folded the sweater I'd been mending, old habit, and laid it in the drawer. Then I opened the door. He stood there, taller than I remembered, eyes not quite meeting mine. He had a paper in his hand, a printout, neatly stapled, too neat. I know it's a lot, he said quickly, but Mom said you might be able to help. I raised an eyebrow. He rushed in. Just the first semester. Or maybe just the dorm deposit. I mean, I'll pay it back. Of course I'll pay it back. I took the paper. It was a college estimate. Tuition, room, board, books. $28,000, circled in blue pen. Why me? I asked. He fumbled. Well, you know, you don't really spend much, and it's not like... He paused, shifted his weight. I mean, you're just here, right? There it was. I'm just here. As if I sprouted from the wall. As if my presence had no cost, no story, no root. I didn't raise my voice. I never do. I just handed the paper back. No, I said. He blinked. Wait, what? I said no. His jaw twitched. Why? You don't even do anything with your money. I looked at him, this boy I once taught to hold a spoon, who now held my worth in dollars and digits. I do a lot with it, I said. I built this house. I fed this family. I kept things afloat when no one else would say they were sinking. He opened his mouth, closed it again. You mocked me, I continued, laughed at my stories, called them dumb, dismissed the very thing I spent my life building. That's not— It is, I said. And it's not about punishment. I'm not angry. I'm done pretending I don't exist. He stepped back, confused. I said I'd pay it back. And I said no. It wasn't a fight. It was a boundary. Clean, sharp, overdue. He left the paper on the counter. I didn't touch it. Later, I heard him talking to his mother. Angry, loud, all fire and confusion. She won't help. She said no. Who does that to their own family? I expected her to defend me. I don't know why, but she didn't. She said, she's just old. She's being difficult. I'll talk to her. She didn't, and I didn't wait. That night, I packed a bag, just a small one. A few clothes, my notebook, a photo of Paul, the deed, and a flash drive with all my stories. I left a note, not an explanation, just a sentence. I was never yours to ignore. Then I called Eleanor. She met me at the door, no questions, just held out her arms and said, You finally ready? I nodded. She had a friend, a woman with a rental space, 1 bedroom, no stairs, quiet building. I signed the lease the next morning, paid for 6 months up front. My money, my name. The keys felt cold in my hand, heavy in the right way. I sat on the floor of that empty apartment and exhaled for the first time in years. Not because I was free, because I'd remembered I was allowed to be. I made tea that night, a single cup, and sat by the window. No one interrupted. No one complained about the smell. No one asked me to keep it down. The silence was not absence. It was peace. I opened my laptop, logged into the writing site. My stories had over 3,000 readers now, women from everywhere, Florida, Oregon, Nova Scotia. One comment said, You're saying what I never could. Another said, You reminded me I'm still here. I posted a new one that night. The boy who asked for a future and forgot the past. I didn't use names. Didn't need to. The truth knows itself. By morning, it had over 600 shares. Later, I got a message from a woman named Laura in Vermont. She wrote, I read your story to my daughter. We both cried. I left a man who called me invisible. You gave me the courage. I closed my eyes, not from sadness, from awe. I had spent years thinking my voice had gone quiet. Turns out, I just needed the right room. The office hadn't changed. Same creaky floors, same dusty blinds, same fern in the corner that had somehow survived a decade of neglect. Eleanor sat behind the desk in a wool cardigan, glasses low on her nose, tapping a pen against her thumbnail the way she always did when reading something slowly, deliberately. This is the deed, I said, laying the envelope down between us. She looked up. I remember. You and Paul came in together. He joked about how you finally had something that didn't come with a mortgage. I smiled. He always hated debt. She nodded. Smart man. I watched her unfold the papers. I hadn't touched them in years. Not since we updated the trust after he died. I knew every line by heart. My name, his signature, the date, in faded ink, June 17th, 1976. I want to move the title into a revocable trust, I said. She didn't flinch, just asked, Who's the trustee? Me, I said. And only me. She raised an eyebrow. No backup? Not this time. I felt the weight of it then, not the decision, the clarity, the way it settles in your bones when you finally stop asking for permission to exist. Eleanor drew up the paperwork. She was quiet, careful. Once, years ago, she'd helped us craft our wills. I remember Paul looking at her and saying, "Make sure Edith always has the final say. She's the one who remembers everything." He was right. I signed each page slowly, no tremor in my hand, no second thoughts. When it was done, she pushed the last page toward me. "There," she said. "The house is protected. No one can sell it out from under you. No one can claim you don't own it. It's yours." "It always was," I said. "But now it's official." She leaned back, studied me. "You going to tell them?" I shook my head. "Not now. Maybe not ever." She didn't ask why. She knew. Some truths aren't for everyone. Some are for you, and only you, and the quiet space you make around them. I left her office feeling taller. I didn't go back to the house that day. I went to the park instead, sat on a bench and watched people pass by, mothers with strollers, teenagers with earbuds, old men with canes. No one looked at me. I liked it. I wasn't anyone's chore. I wasn't a pair of hands folded in the corner. I was just a woman sitting in the sun with a satchel full of stories and a new signature on a document that said, "This is mine." Later that afternoon, I got a message on the writing site. It was from a young woman in her 20s. She wrote, "My grandma died before I could say sorry for not listening to her. Your stories feel like her voice coming back. Please don't stop." I didn't reply. I just pressed my fingers to the screen. Quietly, reverently. That evening, I opened the notebook and wrote a new entry. The lawyer's office. It wasn't dramatic, just details. The weight of the pen, the sound of Eleanor's chair creaking, the smell of ink and old wood. I ended it with a sentence Paul once told me when we paid off the house. "Own your name, Edith. Own your name and your story. That's all the world can't take from you." Back in the apartment, I unpacked slowly. One box of books, a photo frame, the kettle, and the box of stories, placed carefully at the foot of the bed like an altar. No one had texted me. No one asked where I was. Not that day, not the next. But I wasn't hurt. I was relieved. Because silence, I'd learned, is not always abandonment. Sometimes it's space. And space is what lets things grow. On the third day, the phone rang. My daughter. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Dylan. I turned it off. I wasn't punishing them. I was preserving myself. That night, I brewed tea, opened the laptop, and began typing a new story. The day I became my own witness. He didn't believe me at first. He thought I was bluffing. "Wait," he said, holding the paper like it had changed shape. "You're saying no? Just like that?" "Yes," I said. He blinked. "But why?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to make sure I said it right. Not loud. I'd said too many things quietly over the years, hoping to be heard without disturbing anyone. But this time, I spoke with the weight of every silent dinner, every interrupted story, every thankless task folded into the day like laundry, because I'm done paying for disrespect. He laughed, unsure. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I said, "that you can't mock me one week and expect me to fund your life the next." His jaw tightened. "This isn't about that dinner, is it?" I looked at him. 17, but already carrying the arrogance of a man who's never had to wonder where comfort comes from. He wore the same hoodie he used to drag on the floor as a child. Now it looked like armor. He stood with his arms crossed, posture all edge. "It's not just about that," I said. "It's about everything." He threw his hands up. So you're just going to let me fail? I stayed quiet. He tried again. What kind of grandmother does that? And that, right there, that was the moment. I had to steady myself. Not from sadness, from clarity. The kind, I said, who has been treated like a convenience store. Open 24/7. No thank you. Just take what you want and leave. He didn't like that. You're overreacting, he said. You're taking everything so personally. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. Because it is personal, I said. When someone tells you your stories are dumb, your voice is irrelevant, and your presence is optional, that's personal. He stood there, arms folded, lips pressed tight. And let me be clear, I continued. This isn't revenge. I'm not trying to teach you a lesson. I'm just not going to pay for someone who doesn't see me as a person. But I said I was sorry, he muttered. You said you needed money, I replied. There was a pause, a long one. I could feel his frustration simmering. Then he said it. Whatever. I'll find someone who actually gives a damn. And he walked out. The door slammed, a hollow sound. I sat down on the edge of the bed, let the stillness settle. This wasn't how I wanted things, but it was what they'd earned. I didn't cry. Instead, I pulled the notebook from the drawer and began a new page. The boy who called it love when it was need. I wrote it simply, honestly. He asked for help. I said no. He left angry. The end. That evening, my daughter called. You refused? She asked. No greeting. I did. You know he needs this, Mum. You know we're struggling. I do, I said. And you still said no? I did. She went quiet. And then, with the same tone she used when she was 12 and didn't get what she wanted, she said, You've changed. No, I said softly. I've returned. To what? To myself. She hung up. It didn't sting the way I thought it would. It just confirmed what I already knew. I was never really allowed to be a full person in that house. I was a resource, a placeholder, a story in a chair they didn't want to hear, until I stopped showing up. And now? Now I write. I wake up with purpose. I brew tea, open the laptop, and pour the day into words. The comments come in by the dozens now. Women thanking me, sharing their own stories, grieving what they gave and never got back. One woman wrote, You've given me language for my silence. Another said, I read this aloud to my mother. We both wept. Sometimes I just sit and read those words, letting them wrap around the space that used to be filled with guilt and waiting. I'm not alone anymore. Not in the way that matters. Because now, when I speak, someone listens. And when I say no, it means something. He came to the apartment. I don't know how he found the address. Maybe he asked Eleanor. Maybe he followed the trail of someone finally paying attention. He stood at the threshold, all posture and tension. I just need to ask one thing, he said. Is it true? About the house? I didn't answer immediately. I let him feel the question in the silence. He shifted his weight. Mom said you never signed it over, that it's still yours. It is, I said. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just a small breath, like something had deflated inside him. We thought. I know what you thought, I said. That I was just there, just passing through, just borrowing space in a home I paid for. He looked stunned, not angry, not yet, just disoriented. You never said anything. You never asked. He rubbed his face. So wait, all this time, I repeated. He sat on the edge of the armchair, the one by the window. He didn't ask permission. But why? He asked. Why not just say it? Why let us think it was Mum's house? Because I didn't want to prove myself to people who'd already decided I didn't matter. He flinched. I let that sit. He looked around, at the sparse room, the books on the shelf, the kettle on the counter. This place is so small. It's mine. He nodded slowly, then quieter. I didn't know. No, I said. You didn't want to. There's a particular kind of silence that follows a broken illusion. Not grief, not guilt, just the slow rearranging of truth. I watched it happen in his face. But we live there. Yes, I said. You do. In a house you thought was yours, built by people you forgot existed. He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He just looked tired. Is that why you said no? He asked. No, I said. I said no because you asked for something without respect. You asked for money, not relationship. You wanted support from someone you didn't support. He looked down. I softened then, just slightly. You think you're the first to forget? I asked. People forget women like me all the time. We do the work, we keep the wheels turning, we disappear. And when we stop disappearing, when we speak, everyone acts surprised. He didn't speak. I loved that house, I said. I loved what it represented, family, roots. But a house is just walls. What makes it a home is how you treat the people in it. He swallowed hard. I handed him a small stack of papers. Not the deed. Copies. Marked clearly. I moved the house into a trust, I said. I'm the only trustee. That means I decide what happens next. His eyes widened. I'm not evicting anyone, I added. I'm not cruel, but I'm also not invisible. If I'm not wanted in the house, I won't pretend I am. But I won't let you pretend it's yours either. He didn't say thank you. He just took the papers and left. No hug, no anger. Just the quiet weight of truth pressing down where pride used to live. That night, I wrote a story called Inheritance. It wasn't about property. It was about what we pass down when we're not looking. The habits, the blind spots, the way we teach people how to treat us by how long we endure it. I posted it anonymously. It became my most read piece within hours. One comment read, "My grandmother died, and we never knew she owned our house. I wish she'd told me. I would have listened." Another, "This made me call my mother and say thank you." That night, I made a cup of tea, stood at the window, and watched the lights blink in apartments across the city. Somewhere in one of those windows, someone was reading my words. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. And that, more than any document, any title, any deed, was what I had been waiting for. The messages started 2 days after he left with the papers. First came the angry ones. "You really think this is fair?" Then, "I can't believe you're doing this to us." And finally, "After everything we've done for you?" I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because I'd finally learned that silence can be louder than explanation. Then the tone shifted. "Grandma, I didn't mean it like that. I was just stressed. You know how college stuff gets. I didn't know it was still your house, I swear." I read them all, one by one. Let them sit in my inbox, unanswered. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. This was the same boy who laughed at my stories in front of a table full of family, who rolled his eyes when I spoke, who told his friends I wrote like it was the 1800s. I could hear Paul's voice in my head. People apologize when they lose access, not when they gain understanding. The words weren't real yet. They were desperation. And I wouldn't be someone's desperation again. On the third day, he sent a voice message. I didn't play it. Not right away. I waited until evening, after the sun had slid behind the buildings and the kettle was warm in my hands. Then I listened. His voice cracked. I messed up, Grandma. I know I did. I was stupid. I didn't see you. I mean, I did, but not like I should have. I thought you'd always just be there. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. He paused. I still want to go to school. I'm scared I won't get in without the money. But if you don't help, I get it. I do. It was the first time I'd heard him sound like the boy I once knew. The one who whispered stories back to me in bed, who pointed to the stars and asked their names. I listened twice. Then I turned off the phone and put it away. I didn't cry. Instead, I wrote a story called The Sound of Almost. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the space between recognition and change. About how people reach for you when they lose the thing they never thought could walk away. It ended with a line I still taste like metal in my mouth. She forgave him in her heart, but not with her checkbook. That story was shared over 2,000 times. One woman commented, I said no to my son last year. He hasn't spoken to me since. This gave me peace. Another wrote, there's a freedom in choosing your own worth over someone else's comfort. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't write back to Dylan. Not then. Maybe not ever. He had the truth now. He had the knowledge that the house wasn't his, that the stories he mocked had readers, that the woman he dismissed had power. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's more than they deserve. And sometimes it's just the beginning of something they'll have to carry themselves. The apartment was nothing special. One bedroom, a kitchen that hummed when the fridge kicked in, a bathroom mirror with a scratch across the corner. But it was mine. No one asked me to be quieter. No one rolled their eyes at the smell of soup on the stove. No one left their socks on the floor expecting me to pick them up. That first morning, I woke up without the sound of someone else's alarm. I brewed tea. Real tea. Loose leaf. The kind I used to love before everything got rushed and pre-packaged and flavoured to please other people. I sat by the window, cross-legged on a chair that didn't match anything but felt like mine. The sun hit my shoulder through the glass. For a moment, I felt young, not in body. I creak when I stand, and my knees argue with me on stairs, but in self, in soul. No one needed anything from me, and I didn't need to shrink to make room for anyone else. It felt like breathing after years of holding my breath. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time. I folded each thing with care, not because anyone would see, but because I wanted to do it gently, like a ritual, like honoring everything that had carried me to this point. Books on the shelf, quilt on the bed, a photo of Paul on the dresser. The rest could wait. I didn't fill the silence with noise, no radio, no television, just the hum of the fridge, the occasional street sound, the creak of the building settling into itself, like I was. I walked to the market later that day, picked vegetables with both hands, choosing carefully. No one rushed me. No one sighed behind me in line. I bought a loaf of bread from a woman with silver braids and eyes like old oak. She called me Mom, with a smile that didn't feel obligatory. Back home I made soup. The real kind, from stock and scraps. I hadn't cooked like that in years. There had always been someone to say, "Do we have to eat this again?" Or, "That smell is too much." There had always been limits placed on my generosity. But this was just for me. I ate at the table, no phone, no screens. Just the bowl and the bread and the quiet pleasure of something made with care. After dinner, I lit a candle. Lavender. Just because I wanted to. No one complained. No one told me it triggered headaches or made the room stuffy. I read for an hour, then wrote. The newest story was called A Room with No Apologies. It was short. Just a description of a woman making tea in a space she didn't have to earn. A woman walking barefoot because she could. A woman who didn't owe anyone an explanation for how she lived her day. I posted it under Marian Ellis. The responses came quickly. One said, "I just moved into a retirement community. Everyone calls me sweetheart. I feel erased. This reminded me I still exist." Another, "You just described my dream life. I didn't know it was possible." I closed the laptop and smiled. This was not revenge. This was reclamation. Later that week, I hung curtains. Pale blue. Light enough to let the sun in, strong enough to close when I wanted privacy. I put a hook by the door for my coat, bought a plant, a peace lily, and named her Sylvia. I made the place mine. Eleanor came by on Sunday. She brought scones and that sharp look she gets when she's proud, but doesn't want to say it out loud. "Looks good," she said. "It feels good." She nodded. "And they haven't come around?" "They will," I said. "Eventually." "You ready for that?" "I don't know," I said. "But I'm not afraid of it." She stayed for tea. We talked about books, about women who vanish into the wallpaper and what it takes to peel themselves back out. When she left, she hugged me harder than usual. "You're doing it," she said into my shoulder. "You're really doing it." I held her a moment longer. "Not doing," I whispered. "Being." It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. The sky soft with that kind of pale grey light that makes everything feel slower. I was folding laundry, not because I had to, but because I wanted the towels warm and stacked the way I liked. No one else's preferences to consider. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps, not urgent, not impatient. I opened the door, and there he was. Dylan. No hoodie, no headphones. Just a simple shirt, collar wrinkled, face unsure. "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said. I didn't answer, just stepped back, let him in. He walked slowly, glancing around like it was a museum. Everything small, neat, clean. He touched the corner of the bookshelf, glanced at the photo of Paul. "I haven't been here before." "No," I said. "You haven't." He sat down in the chair by the window, the same one he took without asking the last time. This time he waited for me to sit first. "I read your stories," he said. I looked at him. He shifted. I found them. The writing. It came up on my feed. Someone shared it, said it reminded them of their grandmother. He paused. "I didn't know it was you. Not at first. I couldn't stop reading. And then something hit. The way you said things, the details. And then I saw the cardigan one. And I knew." I said nothing. He cleared his throat. "They're good," he said. "Really good. I don't know anything about writing, but they feel true." I nodded. He looked down. "I came to say I'm sorry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. It was small. Real. I wasn't just rude. I was cruel. And not just once. I made you small. I treated you like furniture. Like you'd always be there, no matter what." He took a breath. "I've been thinking about that night. The one with the chicken and green beans. You looked at me like you didn't recognize me anymore. And I deserved that." I folded my hands in my lap. He continued. "I told myself you were just old, that you didn't get it. But the truth is, I didn't want to listen, because listening means changing, and I didn't want to change." The room was quiet. Even the refrigerator stopped humming. "I don't expect anything," he said. "Not money, not forgiveness. I wanted to come here, to this place, to see where you went when you finally chose yourself." He looked around again. "It's quiet," he said. "But it feels full, like it's yours?" "It is," I said. He nodded. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. I know that probably sounds weird coming from me, but I am. I looked at him, saw traces of the boy he used to be, the boy who asked for bedtime stories, who once wrote me a card that said, "You're the best star finder in the world." And I realized something. He wasn't asking for redemption. He was offering recognition. That matters. I stood up, walked to the shelf, and took down the cardigan, the one with the stitched roses and the missing button. I handed it to him. "You called this embarrassing once," I said. He looked at it, held it gently. "I remember. I never wore it again, until yesterday." He looked up. "Why now?" "Because no one here makes me feel like I should hide." He ran his thumb along the sleeve. "It's beautiful," he said. "I was just too young to know what beauty looked like." I smiled, just a little. He didn't ask to stay. He stood, folded the cardigan carefully, and placed it back where it belonged. "I'll read everything you write," he said, "even the ones that hurt." I walked him to the door. He turned once more before leaving. "You were never just there," he said. "I see that now." The door closed quietly behind him. I stood for a moment in the quiet. No shaking, no ache, just peace. And then I sat down at the desk and wrote a new story. The boy who knocked without asking for anything. I didn't tell anyone, but I started sleeping through the night again. No dreams of doorways, no phantom footsteps in the hall, no sudden wakefulness at 3 a.m., wondering if I'd left the stove on or forgotten someone's birthday or disappointed someone just by existing. Just sleep. Deep, quiet, ordinary sleep. It's strange how peace arrives, not like a parade, like moss, slowly, softly, taking root where the noise used to live. The apartment began to feel like home in the smallest ways. The spoon I always reached for first. The towel I folded a certain way because Paul used to joke it was military regulation neat. The chipped mug I refused to throw away, even when the handle finally gave up and snapped. I glued it back. It held. So did I. My stories kept growing. Thousands of readers now. And not just women, men too. Sons who said they'd seen their mothers in my words. Husbands who said they read the pieces aloud at night as apologies. One woman wrote, "Your stories are what I read to remember I'm still someone." Another sent a message. "My daughter hugged me after we read your essay together. She said, 'I didn't know. I'm sorry.' We cried. You did that." Every time I opened the site, it felt like a small gathering. A room full of women I'd never met, but somehow always known. We shared the same grief, of being useful but not valued, visible but not seen, heard only when we were quiet. And slowly, my name began to travel. Not Edith. Marian Ellis. A podcast host reached out, asked if I'd consider reading one of the essays aloud. I didn't say yes, not yet. But I thought about it. For the first time in a long time, I thought, maybe my voice isn't something to be hidden. Maybe it's the part that saves me. I walked past a bookstore last week. There was a flyer in the window. Open mic. Stories from the silent years. I stopped, stared at it for a long time, then walked in. The woman behind the counter looked up, smiled. She had grey hair pulled into a bun with pencils stuck through it like pins. "You here for the reading?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "I'm just looking." "Looking's how stories start," she said. I picked up a notebook from the display, flipped through it. Blank pages. I used to fear blank pages. Now they feel like possibility. I didn't read that night, but I stayed, sat in the back row, listened to women stand behind the mic with voices like broken glass and honey. I wept once, quietly. When one of them read a poem that ended with, "She left the room, but not the story." That line stayed with me, because that's what I'd done. I left their house. But not my story. My story had just begun. And now, when I write, I don't do it for legacy. I do it for breath, for the rhythm of my fingers on the keys, for the moment when a sentence clicks into place like a truth I'd always known but never dared say. I write because I still have things to say, and I've learned, finally, that saying them is enough. The letter came in a plain white envelope, no return address. I knew the handwriting immediately. My daughter's. Inside, 2 pages, one typed, one handwritten. The typed page was practical. Something about utilities, forwarding mail, the kind of life admin that fills the space where conversations used to be. The second page was different. It was shorter, just a few lines, in ink. Her handwriting hadn't changed since high school. Round letters, too much pressure on the downstrokes. Mum, I've been reading your stories. I didn't know how much I hadn't asked. I didn't know how much I'd stopped seeing you. You were never just here. I'm sorry. I hope you keep writing. Love, C. I folded the letter once, then again, held it in my hand like something alive. She didn't ask to come see me. She didn't ask for money, or explanation, or comfort. Just said the thing she should have said years ago. That counts for something. That night, I posted the last story in the series, the one I'd been building toward without realizing. The grandmother who chose herself. I wrote about the little things, the first cup of tea in silence, the cardigan worn again, the smell of lavender at night without apology. I wrote about what it feels like to be seen not as a role, but as a person. Not a caretaker, not a babysitter, not a backup plan. A person. With memories. With worth. With a name. I ended it with this. They say a grandmother's love is unconditional. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe love should have conditions, like respect, like listening, like not expecting someone to disappear for your convenience. She still loved them. She just loved herself more. And then, just below that, I added one more line. If this story reminded you of someone, tell them. Before they leave the room, but not the story. The site crashed for an hour. Too many shares, too many comments, too many people saying, "This is me." I closed the laptop and sat by the window. Same chair, same light, same peace. Across the street, a young woman was pushing a stroller. She wore her exhaustion like armor. I wanted to tell her, write it down. Everything. Don't wait until they forget to ask. But she walked on. Maybe one day she'll read the story. Maybe she'll recognize herself in it. Maybe she'll feel less alone. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if Dylan will come back, if my daughter will show up with tears or with flowers. I don't know if this small apartment will be my last home or just another stop. But I know this. I am not waiting anymore. I am not asking to be heard. I am not holding my breath. I am not softening my truths to make others comfortable. I am living, fully, finally. And if you're reading this, if you've ever felt like the background noise in your own life, let me say this clearly. You are the main story. You always were. Write it, speak it, own it. And when they come asking, as they always do, for money, for help, for another piece of you, it's okay to say no. You're not selfish. You're just finally whole.